Welcome to this presentation of our data repository. The first place to start, as usual, is our website. If you go to the For Researchers here, All Options, Resources, you will find a link to our guidelines. We have several guidelines explained here, the guidelines for immunoanalysis, the guidelines for treatment reporting, and for us today, the guideline for data sharing. So let me first discuss a few points of these guidelines that you can again download directly from here. As discussed in other talks about our open science policy, the objective is to create an ecosystem of FUSF data from the project that we are funding to provide you, the researchers and the community, to replicate study, reanalyze the data, reuse the data in some circumstances, perform cross-comparisons, support the development of your own projects or protocols, and of course, for us, aggregate data from multiple sites and projects. So in these guidelines, you will find how or suggestion on how to format your data, and you will find explanation of the type of license and also a link to our data repository collection. This link can also be accessed directly from the main guidelines webpage just here. If you follow the link to the data repository, you will arrive on this focused ultrasound webpage on the OSF webpage where our collection is hosted. So this is a collection of projects that you can search by program area, by status. For example, if we look for technical completed, we'll find currently 2 projects. So if we go into one of these projects, to show you what we have here. So you'll find a description of the project, what were the objectives typically, and the methodology. And you will find different components, the project description in this case, the data, a link to the associated publications. The data can be stored directly in the data repository as, for example, an Excel file or PDF file of different files that are supported by the OSF website. Or you can also link to other data repository where you could have stored your data, like Dropbox or Amazon buckets. And so there is a long list of data repositories that you can associate with your projects. The components of your project can be made public or private, so you can first use this project page to work and to collaborate on your research by having, for example, data or other components of your project private and make them public when you are ready to share your data. It's very easy to add a project to our collection. But first, of course, you need to be registered. And then you will go Add to Collection and select among the project that you have created a project to add to the collection. For example, I created this test project for the purpose of this demonstration, so let's select it. The first thing you need to do is to add a project. So the title of the project, so test, for example, test FUSF project. Then you will be asked to add a description of the project. So typically, what we would like you to do is to add a description of your objective, your working hypothesis, the methodology that you're going to use, what data you expect to collect, and that will be made public. The license that we recommend in the CC by Attribution 4.0 International, if you go back to our guidelines, you will find more explanation and a link to a detailed description of this license, which basically allow copying and redistribute the data in their original form. So no remix, transformation or bulk upon for non-commercial purposes under a requirement that appropriate credits be given. Going back to our project page, the next thing you can do is to add tags if you want to enhance the discoverability of your project. And then you will be asked to ask project contributors. This is something that you can also do later in your project page. So for example, I'm looking for Matt Eames from the foundation. Type the name, here he is. So I can add him to the project and select if I want Matt to be able only to read and write, to be an administrator. I want him to be full collaborator on the project. Continue. And then to complete your submission, collection metadata of the project. So is it clinical, preclinical, technical, or veterinary? So that would be, let's say, a technical project. And the status is active. Continue. We are done. Add to the collection. Adding a project to the collection will make the project public. You have a warning here. And again, you can go back to your project, to some of the components, decide to make some public, decide to make some private, until you want to have them public. So let's add to the collection. Your project has been added to the collection, and here we go. And a few last points to conclude this short presentation. The first one is that our data repository is only for preclinical projects. For clinical data sharing and processing, we aim at collaborating with platforms such as Project DataSphere, something that should be available to you in the very near future. In our guidelines, you will find information on how to describe your data, the format, especially information of data formats that are supported directly by the repository, or storage provider that are supported by the FUSF and that you can link to your project if you prefer to continue storing your data in an outside repositories, or if the data you want to store are not supported directly by our repository. And finally, going back to this repository, the last point we wanted to emphasize is that this is a data repository. This is not a place to process the data. So again, if you go into one of the projects, you will find data, for example, in this case, as just simply an Excel file. It can be a MATLAB code, it can be whatever you want, but this is not a place where you can mine or process the data. You can upload the data, do your own processing, but this functionality is not supported by this data repository. Again, something that should be supported, at least for clinical data, when we will collaborate with Project DataSphere. So if you have any question, feel free to reach out to us. A lot of documentation can be found in our guidelines directly from the platform. And thank you very much.